Okay, so our next speaker is Chandrasekhar Lakshminarayan, who works in the areas of reinforcement learning, stochastic control, and deep learning. He obtained his PhD from the Department of Computer Science and Automation, Indian Institute of Science, and was a postdoctoral research fellow at the Department of Computing Science, University of Alberta. And he was a research scientist at DeepMind London. And before his PhD, he was an analog design engineer at Cosmic Circuits for a couple of years. And currently, he's a assistant professor at IIT Palakkad. So, and he'll be talking to us again about reinforcement learning. So, Chandrasekhar, if you can set up your presentation and we can get started. Thanks.
Yeah.
I can see your presentation and can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think, yeah, let me get started. So I think, so the agenda for the talk will be the following. So initially, I will be giving a very intuitive and introduction for reinforcement learning through a very simple example. And we will be defining a sub goal where we will say value function learning is our sub goal. So this is the first part of the talk. Then what we will do is we will look at how to learn value functions, first using model, and then using just samples. Okay, so this is where the technique of temporal difference learning comes in. And the third part of the talk is a bit technical, and which uses the theory of linear stochastic approximation algorithms to tell us how to design step sizes and how to comment about rate of convergence of these algorithms. Okay, so the initial first two parts are quite intuitive. So please feel free to ask the questions. Yeah, so let us first go into the setup of reinforcement learning through a really small example. Right. So first we will look at the big picture of reinforcement learning. Okay. So the big picture of reinforcement learning is that the goal here is to control an unknown stochastic environment. Okay. So control tasks are slightly different from prediction tasks, such as say image classification, for instance, where you are shown a picture and then you are supposed to predict what category that picture belongs to. So you are presented with a picture of a dog or a cat, and then you have to predict whether it's a dog or a cat. Okay, and once you predict, so you would somebody would tell you whether the prediction is right or wrong. Okay, whereas in a control task, you are trying to really alter the state of the environment. Okay, so for example, in Robo Soccer, you make a decision which is to kick the ball. That means the ball actually goes to some other place. So the state of the system actually changes. The same thing happens with driving, where your control actions are basically the accelerator, the brake, the steering. And once you take an action, the state of the system changes. Okay, so there is nobody who is going to tell you what is the right action at any point of time. You really have to learn by interacting with the environment. Okay, and you have to control the environment in a way that is desirable to you. Okay, so this is the setup. Okay, so we will look at a very simple task, which is namely the grid world. Okay, so where we will also introduce some of the notation that's required in reinforcement learning. Okay, so what's the grid world? So the grid world, so here I have a grid world which has 25 states. There is a x cross y grid. Okay, and the states are from 1,1, 1,2, and so on and so forth till 5,5. Okay, so what actions does the state agent have in this state? In the state space, the action space is either it can go left, right, up, or down. Okay, so this is the environment. The environment is very simple. There are 25 states, and the agent can keep navigating through the state space through these actions, which are 4 actions. Okay, and what happens here, after each action, the agent gets a reward, and then the state changes. Okay, so let us look at how this happens. So how does the reward look like? So I have given some imagined example. Say suppose the agent is here, at position 1, 3. Then the agent is trying to, 3, 1 actually, and the agent is trying to make an action which is to go right. Then the agent gets a reward of -5, and the agent tries to do the same action from a different state, which is 3, 3. Maybe the agent gets a different reward, which is a reward of 10. Okay, and what happens is that the agent makes an action which is go up, then the agent gets a reward of 0. So the point here is that the same action could fetch different rewards in different states. Okay, so this is very intuitive. So suppose you are driving a car. So depending on how many vehicles are ahead and what's the situation of the road, the way you put the brake or the way you press an accelerator, it's not the same, right? So that's what this is capturing. And the transitions are probabilistic in this point, meaning, say suppose I am in this center state and then I'm trying to move down. Okay, with high probability I will be moving down, but sometimes what will happen is I will also be moving on to the states that are in the neighborhood. Okay, so the actions may not always take us to the desired state. So this is another characteristic of a reinforcement learning setup. Okay, and we have what is known as a policy. So what happens here is that, so the agent needs to know what it has to do in any given state, right? So that's when you have an intelligent agent, right? So the agent uses a policy. The policy tells the agent what it has to do in every state. So here is a policy which says, okay, move here, move down. If you find yourself in this state, you move up, and in this state you move right, so on and so forth. Okay, so what you are supposed, so the mental image that you can create is that there is an agent which is making these actions. Sometimes the action is giving it the desired result, and sometimes the action is taking it away from where it intended. For example, here it tried to move down, but with some probability it can actually move up. This actually models the inherent noise in the environment. Okay, so now what happens under this policy, meaning this is basically capturing the behavior of the agent. So agent is trying to perform these actions. It is trying to exhibit this behavior, and as it exhibits, it collects some random rewards. Okay, it moves randomly in the environment and it is collecting rewards. Okay, so we now come to the very first sub goal, which is known as value function learning. Okay, so the original goal is to control the unknown stochastic environment. So in order to be able to do that, what we should be doing is to actually know, the agent should know what is the value of the current behavior. Meaning, if it is picking actions from the policy pi, okay, and if it is starting from some state, it is behaving according to the policy pi, then it will keep on going around in the environment and it will be collecting the rewards. And the agent wants to know how much it will collect for any behavior. Okay, so this is the goal of, this is a sub goal known as value function learning, right? So we will now move on to the model based approach to value function learning, right? So suppose we are given the transition models. Suppose we are given the numbers p, how the probability looks like, and suppose we are given the rewards, okay, and we want to figure out how the value function is going to look like. Okay, so basically there is a Bellman equation which connects the value that you get in a particular state to the value in the neighboring states. Okay, so you can so the relation is as follows: the value you get from any particular state is what you get for the current action, and the action that you will get from tomorrow to infinity. Okay, so what you see here is that there is pi of a given s, which is the chance of taking an action in the state S Okay, suppose I say that with 50% probability I will be moving down. Okay, and when I move down with maybe 90% probability, I will actually be successful. Okay, I will be visiting this state, and this is the chance of visiting that state. So from time t equal to 2 to infinity, you will be fetching a, so you will be getting the value that corresponds to the state, that is v pi of s dash. Okay, so today you will be getting a reward that corresponds to the current transition. Okay, so this is just splitting up the behavior, the value into two, which is the current value and the value in the future. Okay, so the Bellman equation itself is a system of S equations in S variables. Okay, so what you can do is, if there are 1 to S, where S is the number of states in the system. Okay, so what you can do is you can write down the Bellman equation for each of these states. Then what you will get is a linear system of equations. Okay, as many number of variables as the number of states, and as many equations as the number of states, and as many unknown variables as the number of states. Okay, so now how do you solve this system of equations? Okay, so what you can do is to vectorize these quantities. Okay, so you can just form a matrix equation which says v pi is equal to r pi plus gamma p pi v pi, and you can just invert the matrix. Okay, this is just very elementary stuff that we go through in engineering mathematics. So you just have to invert the matrix and you will get the solution. Okay, this is if you know the values of p and r. Okay, so this is one way. So the other way is to solve it iteratively. Okay, so where we say that vt is equal to r pi plus gamma p pi vt minus 1. Okay, so what happens here is that, so you can look at this iteration as some kind of message passing, where each state, right? So each state you have the reward corresponding to that state, and the reward that you will get from the future visitations. So you combine that, and then you say that that's the value of that state. Okay, so the states 1 to the number of states are there, right, which is still the total number of states. So each state is trying to pass on a value, okay, which is the probability that the that state, particular state, is visited from state I, and the value in the corresponding state. Okay, and it is easy to show that this algorithm actually converges to the original value function. Okay, so now we have to learn the value function using samples. So the takeaway from here is that finding the value function itself boils down to solving this system of equations. Okay, either you solve it in a by inversion or iteration. It is just solving the system of equations. Okay, now what we have is that the agent does not know the environment. Okay, the agent is just walking in the environment. It is seeing each state by state, and for each state it is for these transitions it is receiving sequence of rewards. Okay, so that's all the agent has. Okay, so you don't really have the model for the p or model for the rewards. So you are just receiving the feedback in the form of the rewards. The question is, can we still learn the value function using these samples? So it is quite possible. So the point here is that, so what happens, you can look at the iterative algorithm. Okay, so where what we said was each state is getting some sort of message passing from the other states, right? And what happens in a trajectory, when you are having a trajectory, is at any particular point of time, you will know where you started and where you landed, right? So you will only have the state current state ST and the next state ST plus 1. So you will really not have all the states cannot pass the messages. So what you will really have is a noisy message passing. Okay. So what will happen is you will have the current reward and you will have the value that is there in the next state that you visit. So this is the basic crux. When you move from a full information to a sample based approach, you will really not have the probabilities. Okay, the probabilities are missing, but still what you would want to do is to learn even without the probabilities. Okay, just by looking at the sample trajectory. So what happens is that, so this is the same iterative algorithm, but which is like the message passing, but it is a noisy message passing. This is too noisy for a full update, right? So you cannot completely, so all the information is not there. A lot of information is missing. Okay, which means the information that is missing is an error which appears as noise. Okay, so what will happen now is, so you have to actually filter the noise and you have to still learn. So this is where temporal difference learning methods are employed to learn value functions. Okay, and the very basic vanilla version of temporal difference learning is very simple. So what you do is you have this message passing. Okay, you still have the iterative update, but what you do is you don't make full correction. What you do is incremental correction. Okay, so you just take the message, take a difference between the message and the current value that you have, and only increment by a step size alpha t. Okay, this is the crux of temporal difference learning algorithm. So if you, in a very high level, what you are supposed to understand is that we have a matrix equation, we have a system of equations, and the underlying matrices are not known, but you can still generate samples, right? From which, even without knowing the underlying matrix entries, you can somehow solve the matrix equation. Okay, so now this is equivalent to solving the matrix equation, except that there is noise. And the way we are going to handle noise is that we are going to use incremental corrections. Okay, so that is the temporal difference learning setup. Okay, so now what are the very important questions? So the important question here is, how will you choose the step size sequence? Okay, if you choose really small step sizes, you will make very small learning. Your learning progress will be very slow. And if you actually use very large step sizes, the noise will completely take over, and you will not be able to get correct results. Okay, so we have to know how to update the how to choose the right step sizes. What should be the rate at which we make the corrections? Okay, and suppose we know how to choose the step sizes, then we have to know how the value itself, whether are we learning the desired value. Okay, so this is what we have to now understand. Okay, these are the two key questions which we will be discussing now. Okay, so we will go to the framework of linear stochastic approximation. Okay, where what we have is, we have some set of iterates, okay, which are getting updated by a step size. So the data is given in the form of a vector BT and a matrix AT. And what we are having is this kind of an update where you take BT minus AT theta T, and then you increment, this is the feedback. So you put a small step size and add the feedback. Okay, so then so this is the mean behavior. So the mean of the BT vector is B and the mean of AT matrix is A. And what you can do is you can write the above recursion as follows, where you can split the noiseless part and the noisy part. And suppose we have the matrix A to have all its positive, eigenvalues, the real parts to be positive, then under some conditions we can say that the algorithm will, this iteration will actually converge to the value which is A inverse B. Okay, so this is what we wanted, right? So we wanted to invert the system of equations, and what we are having. So going back here, so this is what we wanted. We wanted to invert the system of equations, and here we have template that will give us this inversion, even when there is noise present in the underlying matrices. Okay, and this particular noise is called the multiplicative noise, because the matrix, the noise is getting multiplied by the underlying parameter that we are updating. Okay, and now we will show that temporal difference learning is in fact a linear stochastic approximation scheme. So you can take a temporal difference learning update and you can write the BT and A-tree matrices this way, where this particular row is corresponding to the current state that you are visiting, and this particular column is again corresponding to the particular current state, and this column corresponds to the next state. Okay, and you can write down the A and B matrices, and what you will have is that the V star, the solution to which this scheme will converge, is the solution that we really want. Okay, so what we really want to know is under what conditions, so which we will be presenting on alpha t, this happens, right? Actually, the VT actually goes and converges to the solution that we require. Okay, so most popular step size for such linear stochastic approximation schemes is the diminishing step size. Okay, which the diminishing step size rule, which is from classical results in stochastic approximation theory, tell us that the total step size that you have to use should be sum to infinity, but the step size, the square of the step size should be less than infinity. Okay, and this is known as the step size actually should diminish to 0. Okay, and this is the diminishing and square summable step size sequence. This is not just limited to linear stochastic approximation schemes, but any stochastic approximation scheme, you would need this diminishing step size sequence. So in practice, what people were doing, or in general do, is to choose some kind of diminishing step size, right? This is C by C naught divided by T plus C, where T is the time. So what you can see is that as time T tends to infinity, this step size sequence reduces. Okay, as you progress in time, your step size is smaller and smaller. You are learning much with smaller and smaller step sizes. Okay, so this is the step size sequence that was there in the classical results. So we will now look at the problem with this kind of step size, and we will show how we can use a constant step size. Okay, so for example, you use this diminishing step size sequence to learn the mean of some random variable. Okay, suppose let us say the mean of the random variable is theta star. Okay, so there should be a square here. Square is missing, but yeah. So what you essentially get is that you will have a bias term, which is the error in the initial guess, that goes down at the rate of t square, and the variance in the noise itself, it is killed by a term which goes down as t. So you get a statistical rate, okay, by following this diminishing step size sequence. Okay, statistical rate meaning when you take t samples, the variance should be of the order 1 by t, right? And if you follow the same diminishing step size rule for this temporal difference learning scheme, even for a single state system, okay, so the bias term, you will be able to see only a reduction to the order of t to the power 2 times 1 minus gamma. Okay, where gamma is a discount factor which is usually less than 1. So imagine that this value is very, very small. Okay, this is close to almost 0. So you actually don't get any reduction at all on the bias. Okay, so this is an issue with such diminishing step size schemes. So this was what was the state of the art for a long time. So what people used to do was not use this 1 by t plus 1 step size, but instead use various step sizes, try various sequences, and then tune for every problem. Okay, and what we looked at was a constant step size and iterate averaging scheme. Okay, where what you do is you actually update. You learn with a really constant step size. You don't reduce the step size over time. So you are kind of aggressively learning. But once you reach the neighborhood of the solution, you take these iterates of these algorithm, but then you run an averaging loop on the top. Okay, so that you kind of separate the learning part from the noise part. Okay, so this kind of scheme was looked at by Polyak and Yudiski for the additive noise case, where the noise is just an additive quantity and it does not get multiplied by this matrix, or it does not get multiplied by the parameter. And there was also another work which considered this kind of constant step size and iterate averaging scheme for the linear least squares problem. Okay, so what we did in our work was to actually look at constant step size and iterate averaging for general linear stochastic approximation schemes, and we were able to show that yes, the bias term will get killed at a rate of t square, and the variance term will get killed at a rate 1 by t. So that means you achieve statistical rate. Okay, you could choose a constant step size. Okay, and what we were able to show was that in the case of temporal difference especially, this constant step size could be chosen in a problem independent manner. Okay, which means you don't have to tune. Okay, so this is one of the very basic algorithms which required step size tuning, and we could remove the requirement of step size tuning. And this is some comparison with some of the prior works where either the rate was not known or a poor rate was achieved, and or the noise itself, the condition of noise itself was very minimal. Okay, so so to give a summary, so what we started was with the goal of the reinforcement learning itself as the goal of controlling an unknown stochastic environment, and the sub goal of that is knowing the value of the current behavior. Okay, which means you have to learn the value function. And what we saw is that learning the value function using model is just solving a set of equations. It's just solving a matrix equation, which you could do with models, and even in the case of samples, you could get the same effect by temporal difference learning, and that is justified by the theory of linear stochastic approximation algorithms. And what we showed that within the scheme of linear stochastic approximation algorithms, one could actually choose a constant step size and still get a statistical rate for temporal difference learning, and the step size could be chosen in a universal way, which is so that you don't have to tune the step size in a problem dependent manner. Yeah, so with this I will conclude the talk, and here are the references. So now I can take some questions if there are any.
Thanks Chandru for the talk. So I'm just collating some questions. You can take these questions live, and the rest you can probably answer by typing out after this session. Yeah, so one question is how is all this related to, for instance, auto regression done in time series, where also the current state is a function of past variables?
Yeah, so in time series, the current state is a function of the past, but there is the decision, your prediction decision will not affect the state. Okay, so the action really does not control the state space. Okay, as opposed to suppose you are driving, suppose I make a steering action, you really are changing the position of the car with respect to the road. You are changing position of everything. Versus in time series, suppose I am looking at weather data, the way I predict is not going to change the weather. Yes, of course, tomorrow's weather is dependent on current weather, but whether or not I predict it's going to rain or not is not going to affect the weather tomorrow. Weather is going to behave the way it's going to behave. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Probably in the interest of time, we will take the remaining questions on the panel where you can type them out, and we can.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks Chandru for the talk.